G'day, HMR here. Getting later and later with the live streams. Oh, so common sense in any healing and recovery journey, or after a relationship breakup with somebody with BPD, or if you have BPD, or if you had a parent that was BPD or narcissist, all these different things that people are going through. So I apologize ahead of time. Hope this video is going to work, but I apologize ahead of time. I made a couple mistakes in the middle, but guess what? Who's perfect, right? So I think it's really important to I could have taken a lot of time to make it perfect or error free, but what's the sense in that, right? So just wanted to start out this live stream with 25 ways to move forward. That might sound like, wow, why would I want to move forward? How do I move forward? Because I don't even know where I am, or wherever you may be in your own journey, either after relationship breakup with somebody with BPD, NPD, or you're having difficulty with somebody with BPD, NPD that's a relative, a parent in your family, or you are somebody with BPD and you need to continue or begin your healing journey. So if this will work, let's start with this, and then hopefully you have some things to share, because I think we forget about the common sense approach at the heart of everything else. At least I talk about on this channel. G'day, HMR here. So 25 ways
With 25 ways to move forward after a person with BPD or NPD in your life, or you might be the adult child or both,
I don't know.
or if you are in BPD recovery. And these are just 25 things, ways for you to start moving forward, just making small differences even in your experience while you might be in so much pain or lostness or confusion or back and forth. G'day, HMR here.
Was I really just going to sit there and
with
look
25
like that?
ways
to
move forward after a person with BPD or
All right,
NPD
then, I have
in your
else I
life,
can
or
do.
you
I
might be the
wondered
adult.
about that, but what can you do, eh? So let me just see here. Get into another window. I did the whole video a little while ago, and now I get to do it, I guess, all over again. But I can maybe do it more quickly. Who knows? Oh yes, I have to find what I'm looking for. Hang on there, sorry about this. Technical things and things that one doesn't expect, because I'm proud to celebrate my imperfections and mistake making. So here we go. I'll just do it. I really did video. It's supposed to be a video in the beginning, but anyways, I'll just read it. 25 ways to move forward after a person with BPD or NPD, or if you are in recovery from BPD. Okay, so these are just things to think about. When your self-esteem is low, that will be people with BPD, people with codependency, people after relationship breakup with somebody with BPD or NPD. When your self-esteem is low, life is more difficult to navigate. Is your inner critic running your life? Whose voice are you letting define how you feel about yourself? Whose voice maybe is defining you right now? Try to avoid relying on others to give you a self-esteem boost. Well, people with BPD are doing that. People with codependency are doing that. Soothe yourself. Now, there's two words that are easy to say that mean a whole lot of things. They're very difficult for people to get into the action of in their lives. But learn to soothe yourself. Be with yourself. That's also not easy, but will be rewarding. These are just things for you to think about and or continue doing or start to do. Radically accept yourself. These are common sense things, really. Just radically accept yourself just the way you are right now. That's right. No matter how angry you are, no matter how confused you are, if you have BPD, you don't know who you are, just accept that right now and be with that. That's a step forward. So ask yourself, what is blocking me? Meaning you. Where is your focus? Where would it be healthier? Or would it reduce some pain, even though it might not feel like it? To put your focus, are you resisting or in a process of acceptance? Because what we resist will persist. What we embrace and accept, we're moving toward the action of opening to change. That's at the heart of any healing or recovery journey. So the opinions of others are their responsibility. not yours. Something people have to live their way into understanding in action. But first set that intention in your mind. Have it as a mantra if it helps. The opinions of others are their responsibility, not yours. Your knowing yourself, or being on that road to knowing yourself, is most important. Mindfully focus on yourself and on your emotions. Be responsible for you, no one else. And this is just meant to be inspirational, a little bit of a guide, but these things are very difficult to do. And here comes another one. Learn to regulate your own emotions. Whether you have BPD, whether you're a person with codependency, whether you have CPTSD, after any relationship breakup with cluster B, and even people just normally in life like myself. I've worked on this a lot over the years. And continuing to be mindful of this, we regulate our own emotions more and more effectively. And you might be starting out right now from like wherever you're starting out from. Why be at the mercy of others when you can really learn how to master your own emotions, your own feelings? And what feelings come up if you even start to think, what am I feeling right now? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it loneliness? Does it hurt? Because if you don't face that in the beginning, then you're not going to get into the action of creating the change and healing that you need and deserve. Boost your self-esteem and work on your relationship to and with yourself and finding yourself if you're in BPD recovery. As you cultivate and reframe your day, or maybe a minute of each day, and your inner emotional landscape more fully. Make a list of your positive qualities and your strengths. For some people in general, for some people with BPD, maybe you'll start to try to make that list and you won't think that you have any. And it might be really difficult. And if that happens and you try, make a list of your positive qualities and strengths, then start journaling about what feelings come up for you and why is it that you think like you don't have anything to write on the list. Because everybody has positive qualities and everybody does have strengths. No matter the vulnerability, no matter even people with BPD lost to self. And if you can make a list of your positive qualities and your strengths, at least come up with a couple each time. Set a timer for 5 minutes for each of those. Making a list of your positive qualities and your strengths. Set a timer for 5 minutes and see how many you can list, and do this once a day. And if you can't list any, or you're really blocked, or it really hurts, journal about what feelings are coming up, because they will be like a map, identifying those feelings will be like a map for you to be able to see where you're at and why it is that you can't maybe even do this exercise, because everybody's different, right? Spend extra time on getting in touch with your emotions. Yes, emotions are key to all of this, and that's good common sense. Getting in touch with your emotions can help you start reframing negative core beliefs. So whether you could do that last exercise I just mentioned or not, one way or another, you're going to get in touch with some emotions. Important to journal, and yes, be willing to feel at least a little bit, and then maybe you have to distract yourself from it if it's overwhelming. Get to know yourself. This is what it's all about, right? You are good enough. But I don't think many of us grow up being told we're good enough, or with the thought that parents or people think we're good enough. People who've been in relationships with people with BP or NPD have, somebody in the family, etc., any relationship type with codependency. Whether you think you feel good enough or not, subconsciously, likely not. And people with BPD often, are not feeling good enough. You'll always fall short if you try to be what someone else expects or expected or needs or needed you to be. No one else can define you as, quote, not good enough. It happens in childhood, okay? But now, going forward in your life, no one else can define you as not good enough if you don't allow it. Because guess what a lot of people will realize if you think about this is that it's really you that's the gatekeeper of why you think, based on other people, what they've said, or if you have BPD, you are the gatekeeper of why actually you have this negative core belief that you're not good enough. Don't let anyone tell you that anymore. Don't let that be
predominant. Start to change that. Remember your strengths or cultivate new ones. Nurture your awareness of strengths and or new ones that you're cultivating. And that might happen in a change and recovery process. You'll give a quick boost to your self-esteem. You will be nurturing yourself. And of course, a lot of people are going to have difficulty getting to nurturing yourself. But this is just a little bit of a roadmap you can refer back to. Might help somebody. Try something new, something just for you. It could be you just eat a different flavor of yogurt, if that's good for you. Or you just do something different. If you go for a walk every day, if you take your dog for a walk, walk a different way. Just do something new. It doesn't have to be gargantuan, just anything. Refocus your thoughts and emotions. And when you're trying something new, be really mindful and really focused in the present moment on what you're doing that's new. Because creating new action, new thoughts, even the smallest little change is going to help in the beginning or continuing of neuroplasticity. Refocus your thoughts and emotions. Do something new today. Think something new. Let go of an old negative, painful association or judgment. Or journal about one or more, if that's what comes up. Stay out of the comparative narrative. This is so huge. We've been so a culture, inculcated by culture with this, let alone families of origin. What other people think of you is none of your business. Run your own race. Do you. Be you. Find you to be you. Stop comparing yourself to anyone else. There will always be, there's a really famous quote, I don't have it in front of me. There will always be those that are, somewhat, I don't know how to put the words, but better than us in some way or less than in a way. And I don't mean that as in totality of human beingness, right? But we can't compare ourselves to others because everybody is who they are doing what they're doing. Everybody is in their own place, in their own life. Spend an hour only in self-reflection, which can be really hard at first, but it can be very nurturing to yourself overall. And if you can really get something positive out of spending an hour with yourself, you might just be able to continue to enjoy that emotional place and feeling inside all day. Or maybe it's going to be minute to minute in the beginning. Be the person in charge of your own, not only life, but your inner life, your emotional landscape, your choices, your boundaries. These are all things to aspire to if you're not already in that process. Do something that challenges a fear you have. You could, if you have fear of talking to people in a safe place, you could walk up to a stranger and strike up a conversation, just a little one, just, a short one. You can start a new hobby or volunteer. Or again, spend a little time alone with yourself and just feel what you feel. Maybe you can think of some other things, like whatever you fear. What could you do to just in a small way at first challenge that fear? Maybe have a fear of being alone. Maybe just sitting alone for 5 minutes would be challenging a fear. It's so important to be kind to yourself, reframe your inner critic narrative, which takes time. A lot of people need help with that too. But hey, it's, just the beginning is thinking about it. Really believe or reinforce for yourself that you're a good person. I don't even like the word good, but that you are who you are and you matter, and that counts. And wherever you are, however you are, whatever you feel right now, radically accept that. Don't judge it as good or bad. Just accept that. And if you want to do a journal exercise, try listing self-critical statements that will be what have formed your negative core beliefs. And be mindful to the present. Let go of guilt or a sense of obligation. Feel what you feel. Journal it. Embrace your pain. It has much to teach you. Feeling and grieving your pain will help you know yourself better. And it's never fun, but it's so rewarding. Do something you're good at and enjoy doing. If you can identify one thing that you're just good at, even like just all by yourself, maybe nobody even knows you do this one thing. Do you play guitar? Do you, paint or draw?
Can you just doodle? Like maybe you're a good doodler. I'm a good doodler. I'm not so artistic in drawing or painting, but I'm a good doodler. It doesn't matter if I'm a good doodler. It's just something I can do. Excelling at something, and yeah, even doodling. You know, if you're ruminating about something else, doodling can be helpful, can be comforting, can change your focus, and depending what it is, it can even increase your confidence. Anything that gives meaning, joy, or reframes a moment for you, leading to your learning how to have inner peace. Be mindful of your body. It's your vehicle in this world. Your physiology affects your psychology. It affects how you think, and it affects how you feel. Set and achieve the smallest goal. Just set one goal if that's where you're at. One goal at a time. It could be taking time to just be with you or be you, being very mindful of your focus. Nurture your own energy. One small goal a day if in fact you can't do more. That might be, hey, I'm going to have a shower today, or I'm going to make the bed today, or I'm going to clean up the room, or I'm going to do something in the kitchen. Whatever it is. And if those sound too simplistic for you, you can come up with something that fits with where you are. Create a new positive habit by letting go of an unhelpful one or belief, or something that you do, or stop focusing on that X though. Or if you have BPD, stop focusing on what BPD is and how stigmatized it is, and just know that you need to learn more about yourself, and you can heal and recover. Let go of all that is external that you cannot control. Start to find out, if you don't already know, what do you need? Look everyone in the eye. Look yourself in the eye in the mirror at least twice a day. Good eye contact will increase your confidence and self-esteem. Value yourself and others with boundaries, and a lot of people still have to identify those boundaries. But if you catch yourself even walking around where you live, if you're looking at the floor, if you're looking up at the ceiling, if you're out, for a walk, going somewhere, walking a dog, whatever the case, are you like looking away from people? Look into people's eyes, because it will give you a stronger, it might be hard for some people, it'll give you a stronger feeling of presence. And exercise, and of course that's physical as well as emotional. Stretch your body and your emotional self. When you're taking care of yourself, you will feel better about yourself. Though none of this happens instantaneously, right? These are things to think about and practice. Be grateful. Adversity is a growth opportunity, also can be very painful. Feeling and healing your pain is the way toward peace. It's the way toward healing. Gratitude supports growing positivity. And don't take things personally. It's a tall order, isn't it? Distract yourself from any and all ruminating. Be thoughtful about where you put your focus and energy. Start to be your own advocate. Know that what you need and what you need to find inside of yourself, you are worthy of that and you deserve that. Now make a list of the positive things or people in your life. And again, if you come up with a blank, some people with BPD might, then journal about what feelings come up with that. So if you can make a list of at least one positive thing or one positive person in your life, let go of the negative things or a negative thing or a person in your life, and be open to the feelings of grieving any loss. Check in with yourself over the day. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Find a balance with daily experience. Reframing the lens of your feelings will, after practicing for time, make inner balance possible. You deserve peace. Say no. Oh, what a great boundary. And so many people with BPD, codependency, or codependency and BPD, and people with codependency don't know how to say no. I remember a time in my life when I didn't know how to say no. So say no. Go and stay no contact. As you identify and implement new boundaries, the word no can be a complete sentence.
without apology or justification. And no contact is your way forward. No contact might be your first great big no. It's not something you say to an ex, though, or somebody you're going no contact from, or a relative, a parent, whoever it might be. But just know that your no, you need to go and say no contact. That no contact might be the first no, the first boundary you may have ever set or are going to set in your life. No is a complete sentence. So, in other words, when you need to say no, when you learn how to say no, if you haven't yet, when somebody asks you something or, whatever, or you can say no in your head to the constant thinking about somebody else, the ex, or a family member with BPD or NPD, or whatever the case. But no can be a complete sentence. You don't got to say, no, I can't because blah, 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 or no, I'm sorry, but it just, no. Very empowering. So I'm almost done with this here. Journal about changes that you want or need to make. And then I would also say, if you're doing that, if you start that, start to journal at the end of the day about how you did with that. Strategize ways to make those changes, whatever you identify them to be. What would you like your life to look like? Think about that. Might be really different than it is right now, but that's okay. Radically accept that. Start with being your own best friend. Look ahead, not always back, but even more importantly, be mindful of the now and not being looking back or looking forward. What about right now? And share your opinion freely. I mean, when this is appropriate, right? But speak up and voice your opinion, not holding another's feelings. Break out of passivity. No contact is your quote voice for yourself in action, and nothing needs to be said, but it is the no of taking action. So contribute, participate, show up for yourself, and then maybe in your life show up for others. But show up for yourself first and foremostly. Contribute, participate, be an active participant in your own life to begin with. Be yourself. Do not let anyone else define you. Find yourself, recreate yourself, and begin the process today if you haven't, or continue to learn how to love yourself. Or if you know how to love yourself, great, that's tremendous. Then you have a nice jump off point. So those are just 25 ideas that I hope people can, mix and match or take one or two of and start maybe to change something for yourself, whatever that something might be for you in your here and now. Yes, well, and Clover, said you're still trying to change. Of course. And what I just said, these are practices, these are things to do, these are just helpful things to help people to get clarity, to make change, right? Things need to be practiced. It's not like you're just going to do, even if you did one of those exercises, whether it's physical exercise or journaling, etc., that I just talked about, it's not going to change everything overnight. And Maria said he's already moved on to a new person after our breakup, ending a domestic. Oh, yes, it's only been 3 months. I'm so sorry to hear that. And of course, that's very difficult. And should have been. This I gotta get rid of this dark mode. Okay, I'll just call you should have been because it's about all I can see at the moment. Sorry. Hey AJ, your videos have really helped me understand and cope with a borderline ex that straight up ghosted after 10 months. It's not an easy situation by any means. No, it isn't. And I'm sorry to hear that happen to you, but I'm glad you're finding my videos helpful. It is hard, Clover, but it's really rewarding. And it's one little step at a time. Maria, I wish I could stop loving this man. We have 2 young children. Well, it's a healing and recovery journey, right? And of course, having 2 young children makes things maybe more difficult, but the hope is that you can somehow arrange some co-parenting if they're able to be a parent. And also, you will stop loving this man, but it will take its own time. It's a process. A lot of grief involved there. And should have been
I think it should have been us. And closure will never happen with this person. How do we individually close that gap? Well, I think, there's not just one size fits all answer to that, but it's right. Closure does not happen with anybody with BPD or NPD. And that's what I recommend. One of the reasons I recommend people really get into therapy with someone, because I have so many clients. I might not resonate with you, but if I do, or someone else, um, it's a real process, that, because it is dualistic, right? You're working on your own recovery from after the relationship, and you're also trying to understand more about that and get closure on that. But then the part that goes back for so many people with codependency to childhood, it's a dualistic process. So that's why I'm always talking about not only, and today I'd like to add into common sense approach to things, but not only is it about healing more and reframe and understanding more, maybe in some people's cases, about that person that's now your ex, but it's also focusing on yourself and that inner child healing and the family of origin work and the self differentiation. So it's a multifaceted process. So you can't just get closure within about the ex without looking at the things that you need to look at. And I don't just mean you in the general sense of a lot of people out there with codependency and what people need to heal inside themselves as well as from these relationships. And Maria, BPD, he suffered, yes, really adverse experience by his mother and was abandoned by his father as a child, which is just terrible. I mean, it's horrific. And you got to feel for him from afar now, but you have to maybe focus on your own healing, right? Because the hope is, if he's not in therapy now, that he will eventually, his pain will be enough or too much that he needs to go and get some help, because he must be in a tremendous amount of pain, without a doubt. But again, that's his responsibility now, unfortunately, in a way, right? But it's his responsibility now to be able to go forward and get some help himself. BXN, when the fog starts to clear, start picking up good habits that will change your day. Yes, like meditation is a good thing. Working out, yes, some of the things I mentioned, which you might have been typing at the same time. Focus on learning something new. Yep. You started rollerblading and studying more. Great. And VXN, it's got to be tough having children with the person. Yes, I think that's it. It really is for people. And you said, I think going no contact was hugely important in my being able to start to heal. Much more difficult to do with kids involved. Well, yes, because people have to work and often, courts need to be involved in, maybe even sometimes, depending on situations, that, one parent and the ex can't see each other, and they have to, give, if there's shared custody, child or visitation, child has to be given to a third party to be taken to the other person, come back to be taken. And then when they have to communicate, it's always wise, if this is done in court or in mediation, to have it all written down and agreed to where the limits and boundaries are. The communication is to only be about the children. But of course, people with BPD invariably have trouble sticking to limits and boundaries. But so for a person that is co-parenting with an ex with BPD, for example, whatever, and maybe a lot of them aren't even able to parent, and maybe you have to do the custody thing. But if you're co-parenting, then what you need to keep doing is, if they try to talk to you about anything else, you're absolutely no contact with that ex, except for and limited only to anything that needs to be discussed about the children, right? So watch out for the person, the ex with BPD, or certainly, I don't know, an NPD. Watch out for them to try to manipulate and say things about children that aren't true, and try to talk about the children just to get your attention. Very difficult stuff. Maria, I know what needs to be done. I'm just hurting and so upset he's replaced me. We have no contact by court order. Well, I mean, the no contact may be very difficult, but by court order, that's, important to respect and hopefully continue to grow into, and maybe it's a relief, that part for you. But of course, he's gone on to be with someone else. That would go to the point I made earlier about try not to. What point was that? Let me think. Yes, don't be in that comparative narrative. He's with someone else and you're not. Okay, well, so you're going to be healing and recovering and growing and changing and moving forward. He's just doing something similar all over again. Try not to compare. It should have been us. But I'm not yet 100% of the way to fully block and remove the person yet. That that one wonder if they reach out later. Well, and that's the problem with not going fully no contact is that you're allowing the opportunity that, possibility or maybe wanting even on a part of yourself that they'll contact you later. And whatever growth that you do manage now or you have already, you can be sent back for a time. You don't lose all the growth or whatever. But contact from them can, undo a lot of work and cause a lot more pain. And when you say that you're not yet 100% of the way there, I wonder what's blocking you and why you think that is, which is important for you to think about because it's never going to feel right. It's never going to feel super possible and easy. And there's no, like, really, quote, right time to do it. You really just need to do it. Um, Out to see, hey there, I want to have kids with my girlfriend, even though I didn't love her. Well, that's probably not a healthy idea because it's really important for children the relationship that parents have, as I think most of us know from our own histories. VXM, okay, yes, and hey there, Wheels, how are you doing? And yes, I responded somewhat today. I'm sorry, I will get back to you more, but I hope things are settling down a little bit for you in the midst of everything. Oh, to see, that is the worst when someone replaces you. Well, it likely feels like it's the worst, but it really isn't because, you need to be able to know more about yourself if you have BPD, which I believe you do, out to sea. And the thing is, so you need to focus on yourself, need to focus on your life, need to radically accept and embrace, be mindful of where you are, stay out of that comparative narrative. And so, these are just common sense things that can help people and when they practice them, but of course they're not easy to do. VXN, see it happening more often than not in BPD breakups. They will often start looking for an emotional replacement while they're in the relationship. The breakup only occurs after they've secured it. Yes, and again, not all people with BPD are the same, but that's very true for a lot of people with BPD. Well, out to sea, I think first of all, with all due respect, you need to learn to love you. And when you learn to love you, then you'll be able to, and you will find somebody who will love you. But first, get into your own recovery or continue your own recovery. Find out who you are fully. Heal what you need to heal with BPD, and then you'll be in a great place inside yourself. You'll be being your own best friend, and then love has a way of finding people when they're independent and not needing something from someone else, which isn't just people with BPD, it can be people with different issues in their life or people with codependency as well. I hear you, Maria, when you said it's hard to imagine a life without him, but it's one step at a time, isn't it? So don't look too far ahead right now. Um, well, out to sea, I think when you say people don't want to be alone, society supports the notion that there's something wrong with you if you are alone, which isn't true. But for people with BPD, first you need to learn how to be alone. And for a lot of people with codependency, they need to learn how to be alone. And that requires some process working with a therapist to be able to look at what are the blocks, what are you experiencing when you are alone? Why can't you be alone? Why don't you want to be alone? Some people are really afraid of being alone. It's really important to be able to be alone as part of being an independent person. It then sets people in a place where they can really, relating to self in a healthier way, relate to others in healthier ways. Oh, you're very welcome, Maria. Should have been us. There really is little to no sense behind why BPD people at BPD do what they do in relationships. It's more or less not making sense of the end of a relationship. It's finding your own healthy response to heal. Well, yes, because people with BPD are lacking a self. People with BPD want to be loved and want to love, but they don't know how because of the arrested emotional development in childhood. And it doesn't mean everybody with BPD is walking around like a 2-year-old all day. Doesn't mean everybody with BPD is a crying baby all day. They can be triggered to emotional dysregulation, but that doesn't even mean that they're in some 2-year-old place necessarily, right? Young, but not necessarily all the way back to where the emotional arrested development happened. And I want to also add that people with BPD, while they have massive difficulties in relationships because they don't know the self, they do have a sense of objective reality when they're not triggered, right? And what's going on is they lose a sense of internal reality that can be projected out onto someone, but it doesn't mean that they don't know what time of day it is, right? Etc. And I want to also add here, just as information, common sense really, but BPD is not a brain disorder. BPD is not in the hardwiring. Yes, adverse experience can affect the brain, but there's neuroplasticity and change, and people can heal. But, so there isn't a lot of sense, there isn't any sense really, logically, behind what a lot of people with BPD do in relationships because they want to be close, and as soon as they get close, they have fear of engulfment, they got to get away. And they don't often have awareness or understanding of this. And then that's the push. And then they're going to feel abandoned. And then, yeah, even though they pushed you away, they're going to say you abandoned them. And then they're going to try to pull you back. And on and on and on in a circle. Should have been us. Hey, AJ, she ghosted me after 10 months to be in a quote relationship with someone for a week and a half only to end that relationship. Likely she'll reach out again to me in the future. Or I guess that's you're asking a question. Well, she may well do that, but for your sake going forward, it would be really important for you to be no contact and not allow her to have contact with you in the future. It's going to take you back through all the pain that you may still be working out now. And that's definitely what she did there is, she's not a stable enough person to be in a relationship with. BXN giving in to the Hoover, oh yes, comes at a heavy cost. Best to block and move on. Very true. Very wise words. And I always like when somebody who's done it, says that because I'm always saying that, but it's good to know that, when people share that who've done that, it's important for other people to hear. Of course, it's not easy to do, but it's really important. It should have been us too, VXN. I've been warned about that before, and also when watching AJ's videos, they're often times worse to you each time you take them back. Yes, and the cycles of splitting happen. There isn't much re-idealization, if any, and so the cycle or the half cycle of devalue, come back to base, devalue, happens faster and faster and more often. And you said you need to love yourself more and respect yourself. Definitely. And then VXN said back to, should have been us, absolutely trust it. If it's truth, eventually you will see why you actually felt relieved to be apart from them. It's just hard to rationalize all this emotional stuff. Well, and really, you can't really rationalize the emotional stuff. And that's why people, after these relationships, are really challenged to, learn more about their own internal landscapes, and especially when codependency is in the mix for people, because you're not going to understand something that isn't logical logically. So you need to understand more about yourself and your emotional landscape just to be able to heal and move forward. And then maybe in doing that and looking back after time, you might understand more about what happened with that person with BPD. But people can't. A lot of people think that needs to come first, and they block their own recovery by putting that ahead of themselves. Hey there, Al. I'm sorry to address such personal issue, but I have a hard time dealing with, yes, intimate needs. I'm just watching out for AI, but When I go no contact with my ex, so I end up running back to him because I don't want to be with a new guy. Well, and that's an issue that a lot of people have for sure. And I think that yeah, I mean, you need to keep working on that. I don't know what to say that right now, except that it's certainly not the same, is it? But people should take up a practice of meeting their own physical needs in that regard. But when you said when I go no contact, yes, then you go back. Well, you know what? It may seem like that's the most compelling reason you're going back, but I would think also, even if that's compelling, it's probably not the only reason. So you might want to think about that as well. And is it really all just about you don't want to sleep with a new guy, or I'm sure it's that, as you say, but what's underneath that? What else is happening there for you? I wonder. And that's for you to think about. Laser Chick, cool name. Love your videos. Currently being ghosted by someone I know with BPD, and you said laugh out loud. So I guess you're doing relatively well in that situation then, but I'm sorry to hear that. DXN, we have a huge blind spot, and actually, we don't know our worth. We all need to work on that. Yeah, because that happens in childhood for so many people, so many different ways, so many different reasons. Um, you probably know how unstable they were. You cannot risk your future on uncertainty. Right, everybody deserves better. Oh, I like that, BXN. Yes. Don't build your castle on sand. Right, that's really good. And as wise and insightful as that is, it's also kind of good common sense, isn't it? That, whatever you build on sand is going to, like, obviously collapse, right? Because I'm doing okay, all things considered. I'm still pretty big wreck right now. But I did most of what I had to do today, and I managed to sleep for a bit. Now I'm trying to find the energy to work on an essay. I'm deeply exhausted. Well, I totally understand why you're deeply exhausted, yes, because what you've been through, nobody should ever have to go through. And I know you've been through all kinds of different iterations of that, and that was pretty explosive and horrible, and I'm really sorry that you had to go through that at all. Should have been us. AJ, can you define, quote, engulfment, unquote, for me? I did so much for this person. Being present, a support. Is engulfment being, quote, too present, unquote, in the relationship? Well, sometimes people with codependency, and I don't know, I'm not saying you're codependent, I don't know, but people with codependency can often, be giving a lot that might end up to being a little bit much, but people with BPD can't really accept what you give because they grow up largely in the 75%. They, emotional arrested development, adverse childhood experience at a real deep level in young age. So they don't have any reference for self, but more to the point, they can't take in love. They don't know how to love at that point if they haven't had, treatment, therapy, or substantial, or however we measure that. And so when you're excuse me, when you're being supportive and you're not being too present, but your presence is what will trigger them. Now, okay, let me put that in a better way. It doesn't trigger them actively, like it's not your responsibility, but inside of them, they don't even know where they are in the here and now, right? Like they don't know where they are emotionally, they don't know who they are. So it's very difficult for them to stay present with your presence, if I can put it that way. So it's coming from their past, right? And so engulfment fear is at the opposite, end of the spectrum between like fear of abandonment and then there's fear of engulfment. Well, that really comes from what people experience in infancy to early toddlerhood and or after the arrested emotional development occurs at or before the age of 2, is that they feel this engulfment comes from not positive things, let me put it that way, but that need that an infant has and a toddler has to be close to a parent, but that isn't fulfilled. Or maybe a parent, on the odd time, some intermittent reinforcement, but the engulfment is just this feeling of it, somebody's too close
And then for them, that equates with I'm being controlled, and this person is trying to take over me because people with BP who don't know who they are, haven't been treated, etc., they don't have identity. So they're seeking identity through you. And then when you're really present, it kind of, you get a fear of engulfment that actually is kind of like some abandonment they could feel inside at the same time, in the sense that your presence feels to them like overwhelming, engulfing, because they don't know who they are anymore. If you're really present and they really start to see you, in a sense, and you really get close, then this engulfment fear they have to push away, because it's like re-experiencing loss of self to the arrested emotional development. So it's like why people with BPD can't really do emotional intimacy, because they can't stay close. It's very fleeting. It's like very back and forth, and that's what all the splitting is about, and the cycles. Although I just want to reiterate again, when there's been a lot of splitting to devaluation in a relationship, or when it's an ex now, whatever, and even if they hoover you, they're going to hoover you with like all this false promise and maybe intentions, but they will not have changed, and they will not be able to do anything really differently. And the important thing to remember too is, so your presence is fine. Your presence is healthy. Your presence is, quote, normal, unquote, for lack of a better way to put it. But they then start to feel engulfed, controlled by your very presence, which is their thing. Because now they're feeling like, well, if I start to really see you, because you're here and you're present, then who am I? And it just sets off a whole series of things inside. So I hope that explains it, at least somewhat. BXN, that's amazing insight, AJ. Never thought about the origins of the fear of engulfment. Well, I guess I kind of know this stuff because I went through it. And I didn't know it at the time I went through it, obviously. But when I look back, and I don't do that much often anymore. But as I've looked back over the years, like and when I was in therapy 30 plus years ago, it was like really starting to put pieces together, and then when I've learned, about different theories of this, etc., putting that together was like, wow, yeah. And then knowing what I know in my own, not everything that applies to me applies to everyone else, but knowing what happened with what didn't happen, all that didn't happen with my mother, that, she became for me. And I mean, I didn't remember this. Like I still can't think back and remember, oh yeah, I was like 3 months old and this happened. But in a thematic way that I could explain more about, but I'm not going to go into in detail here. I really know that she was not there that often. Yeah, I know she fed me. I know she did the basics, but there was no warmth, there was no emotional safety, etc., and no bond. And the thing about that is, so when she would show up and when she would be doing whatever she was doing to take care of me, in the absence of a bond, in the absence of the mirroring, in the absence of everything else, I'm sure that I felt, I mean, I look back, but like that would be the essence of the engulfment, because like what infant wouldn't feel like, I think I was, I biologically, it's not a memory, but body tracks and somatic realizations years ago. The thing is that a child can be very engulfed by the otherwise absent, not bonded to, not safe, person, that mother that threatens your biological survival, who then all of a sudden shows up to take care of you. It's like, this is too close, I don't know you, because there's a split happening already at a very young age. And it's like needing that object, but also wanting to repel that object, and that's on a biological level in infancy. And VXN, you said, makes total sense, and I can really recall moments where these things happened with the person. Chu Bang Boon. Hey there. Hi, AJ. It's 11:15 in a.m. in Malaysia. Oh, cool. So you're 12 hours ahead then, because it's 11:13. We're just a couple of minutes off. PM here in Ontario, Canada. We're 12 hours apart. We're 12 hours behind over here. Wheels, yeah, my emotions are everywhere and they come in flashes. I'm not even sure if it's all really hit me yet. Well, yes, and you know what? That if it hasn't, don't think about that part. Just give yourself time, and your body and your mind will have a way of protecting you with that. You said, I've been home alone most of the day, thankfully. I'm kind of
processing carefully in pieces. Well, that's a good way to go about it. Yes. It should have been us. Very much, AJ. Thank you. Welcome. Wills, I just can't break right now. I just can't get a break right now. Well, no. And you so deserve not only just a break, but like you deserve to not have to go through this anymore. What you're going through. VXN, I think this was true for my ex as well. Rings true from what I know about her experiences with her parents early on. Yeah, and I think that, I mean, I did a lot of different kinds of work many years ago when I was in therapy, and I mean, that I got help with, obviously. But I think after that, education helped. And there was times, I'd be sitting in university and, the professor would be talking about something, whether I was, because I took social work and psychology, etc. And when they would be talking about things about family and this and that, I mean, and I was still going to therapy at the time too, right? It would just hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, I used to have trouble regulating my emotions, which we didn't have that terminology back then. But sometimes I would have to leave the class and go to the washroom, and I would either be feeling really angry or I would be in tears because what I was learning intellectually, and what was being explained, which wasn't all about BPD because there wasn't a lot on that, but just family systems even, and I'd be like, that's when it started dawning on me in an even deeper way that nothing like that happened in my family. Like, it was like, what? So there were a lot of those moments. And then I think what I was learning, I was able to put together with later, when I learned more and when I recovered. But at that time, I was still learning and gaining more insight. But then after I recovered, I was able to really look back through the lens of what I learned. And, I mean, I learned more in lived experience than university about BPD in particular and codependency and interplay and these kind of things, because it's not really big in the curriculum, so to speak. But it was just like, I don't know, but there's been so much I've learned to articulate since, right? I guess that's what I'm really just trying to say. And so I hope that the way that I can articulate these things, that's what I try to bring here to help people to understand more, right? Because it's and people with BP or people who've been, who are the ex or who aren't sure yet, or relationship with BPD or somebody with MPD for that matter. And then again, to any relationship type, right? Because I also know what it's like to be the child and then adult child of a mother with BPD, NPD, and a dark G father. So it's like all those issues, and people that are younger that are, I have a lot of clients that are, working with me about how can they go no contact from a parent and all the work that takes, because, I did that 2 years ago and I remember that. So yeah, I think lived experience, with education goes together well, but the education itself doesn't teach people enough, I don't think. So anyway, Wheels said, I kind of feel like this is the final fight for survival, and I just need to hold together a little longer. Yeah, from what you shared with me, it certainly sounds like it, because what happened there was psychos really getting to the edge of something. You know what I mean? And so it's an apex for sure, and the hope is that you can find your way finally away from that. It should have been us. Do you think her, quote, week and a half, unquote, relationship was her way of breaking away from me, or do you think she found her next, quote, prospective partner, unquote, and she found herself idealizing this new person, forgot you? Yeah, it could be a little bit of all of that, truthfully. Could be that confused and mixed up. But I think her week and a half, relationship, and breaking away from you, it really could have been, though it's a very dramatic way to do this, it really could have been her engulfment fear to push you away. And also because they attribute a projective identification, not just projection. And by the way, everybody doesn't project like people with BPD or like narcissists. It's just not true. Well, we can project, but we can catch our projections, and understand that we might be saying something to somebody that might somehow apply to us too, but maybe not the same way or whatever the case. But I think it could have been her engulfment. It could have been a big push away to you, like a ghosting, etc. But so it's hard to say what was going on in her mind or what she thought, right? But obviously, whatever she wanted
when she went to the other person, to the next person, or the other person, depending, um, obviously didn't go well. So now she's kind of in no man's land, right? And they always idealize in the beginning. So with each new person, they will do that. Um, Hard to say whether she forgot you or not. Some people with BPD will do the out of sight, out of mind thing, but she may have done that and then she may come back to thinking about you. But it sounds like you're in a very dangerous place for yourself of being open to her coming back. And I would really, I think it would be really important for you maybe to get working with somebody if you're not already to explore that and to think about that because it's got to be very conflictual, cognitive dissonance up the yin yang for you with, maybe wanting her back and wondering what she did there because that's what your question kind of indicates to me. I'm not sure. But, if you take her back, well, the relationship was kind of like she ghosted you. It's still, I think, in a common sense parlance, reasonable to say that's still a betrayal. Whether one considers that being cheated on, it's a betrayal. And betrayal is a great big red stop sign that says this is not healthy. So I hope you might pay attention to that because it sounds like there's a lot of high percentage chance she's going to come back looking at your way, but then only to go off and look for someone else again. So you got to be really careful because when they go to the next person and it doesn't work out or it ends quickly, or even if it doesn't end quickly after a time, after months or longer, they often will look back to the last person. And you don't want to be taking somebody back. I mean, and yes, I know it's really hard, cognitive dissonance, and you might still really care about this person, love this person, but you're not going to do yourself or them any favors, and nothing's going to work out. Trust me on that. So if you're in this place where you're considering, or you might consider taking her back if she hoovers you, watch out because you're going to go through the whole thing all over again if you do that. So I hope that you can take good care of yourself there. Jordan, AJ, why do you think it's so hard for some people to sit with themselves to be alone? Is it a lack of identity, sense of self? Well, for people with BPD, it definitely can be. And for people with codependency, in a way, with differing degrees, it speaks to both people with BPD and people with codependency that have a hard time or afraid of being alone, or it's hard to sit with self or impossible, really. It's because it really does take people back, whether they have BPD or codependency, to a painful time of loneliness and or abandonment in childhood. So it's that dual layered experience in the here and now again, right? And so it can be lack of identity and lack of sense of self or lack of self for people with BPD, but it's not only that. And also for people with codependency who don't have that lost self, so to speak, it's very much about, goes back to what happened in childhood in times that people needed, as children, really needed something from a parent that didn't come. And that was like scary, anxiety producing or more, and felt really abandoning, which, close with abandonment or any feeling of abandonment at any age in childhood comes this feeling like I'm bad, the shame. And I think that this is what will come up for people when they try to be alone, if they have a fear of being alone or they don't know how to be alone. I've had clients, I have some clients now and some clients recently that have said that, and I think I said this before in a live stream recently, when they're home, they have to have the radio on, the TV on, something on all the time because they just feel like they're going to be engulfed by this like huge nothingness or something, if it's quiet, if they're with themselves. So that's in various different degrees, people with BPD not knowing self, and people with codependency not being maybe consciously aware of where that goes back to in childhood to a really lonely, painful, scary time. Vixen, AJ, I've been here for more than a year and a half on and off, and I have to say that without you, I may not have been able to get past through the funk I was in due to the crazy making involved in the relationship. Well, I'm just glad to be helpful, VXN. So I'm glad that you found, over time, maybe some videos more than others, but I'm glad you found some videos helpful. And that's what I'm here for. I mean, I work with people when they resonate with me if they want to do that. But in the meantime, yeah, I mean, that's what the videos are all about.
And Wheel said, the thing that gets me is that I don't know whether to feel guilty or wish her little stunt backfired. I'm leaning towards the latter, and that's making me feel more guilty. Well, just know that that stunt is her responsibility. She did it. She's the psycho. It's you're taking on. Yeah, I think you're in that shame response, Wheels. Like somehow this must be my fault, and it's not. It's how crazy she is. And it really has nothing to do with you, except it will bring up feelings of obviously this person doesn't know how to care about you at all. It doesn't see you and uses you as a vehicle of their own stuff, I'll just say to keep it general. But the feelings you're having are common. So, in other words, quote, normal for what you're going through to have, but none of this is your doing, your fault, or because of you. So just know that. I hope that that helps a little bit. Should have been us. AJ, I very much appreciate your insights. It isn't something I would entertain taking back. Oh, good. I know my worth and my own self-respect. Good for you. That's really important. Yes, betrayal is a huge flag that she do it again. Oh, absolutely. And I call those, you can call red flags, yes. And sometimes something is such a big red stop sign. But I'm glad to hear that you're in that place with yourself, that you know that, and that you have those boundaries and limits. That's fantastic for you because I had to say that just in case I didn't know. Now you've clarified. But there will be other people who might listen to the stream back and they will need to hear that. So nothing that I say to anybody, even when somebody clarifies for me, and I'm really happy for you, you're not in that place, is wasted effort because there's always somebody who will listen at some point in time who will have needed what I said. And I'm so happy you didn't need really what I said. Um, and Jordan, you said very interesting. Okay, well, yes, I mean, and it's a big thing whether somebody has BPD or codependency. Not being able to be alone is a big sign of a lot of feelings, and for people with BPD, it's lost self, but in a different way and perspective of a more complex process, it's going to be finding the self, and it's going to be reparenting that lost, fragmented off from inner child ego state. So it's more complex in BPD recovery. And for people with codependency, it's going to be about healing that inner child, definitely. And this is what in the process when I work with clients on the inner child healing work, even though they want to talk about the ex, etc. Of course, and that's fine. I don't tell people what to say or not say, but it's really by going into the healing process. And what you're speaking about is, and I'm saying is that fear of being alone or not being able to be alone or not being able to be in your own house without like some noise on or something is a big sign for people to be aware of. That means that you got, if you have BPD, what I just said, or if you have codependency, you have a wounded inner child. There's something in your subconscious that's trying to come to your consciousness, and it can hurt and it can be scary. And so that's why it's really important to radically accept and embrace what's scary and the pain, and then get into therapy and a healing recovery journey so that you can be supported in that and learn how to strategize and learn how to cope with that. And so I think people, various different reasons why people are, but I was somebody, let me just say this, back in the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, and like when I left home at 17 to go to university, like I didn't know how to be alone at all, because I didn't know who I was and I didn't know what that meant. And no, I mean, I'd stay up till the last person in the dorm went to bed. The last person I could possibly be around or talk to or interact with. Yeah, and sometimes I'd be up till 4 in the morning. Everybody would go to bed, and then I would have trouble getting to sleep, and I'd sleep. And yeah, so I went from a place a lot of decades ago now to I was afraid to be alone. I didn't know how to be alone. I didn't know that I didn't know who I was. But I remember some of those stages and steps in that recovery journey. But the point is, today I love solitude. Today it's not, oh, I'm alone. Oh my God. No. Like when I'm in this place here sometimes, and I was doing it earlier actually for about an hour, I was just in between things. I just was sitting here in the dark, and I wasn't sleeping. I think I had a nap prior to that. But I was sitting here in the dark, and I was just, and, dogs with me, and I had the air conditioner on, which is lovely because it's hot.
Right now, my dogs are in the other room, air conditioned, so they're not sweating to death like I am. And my cat is laying over on the couch beside me. But I was just going to say, so now I went from, and many years ago, let's say, I think probably by about 1988 or so, I knew how to be alone. So from the time I was 17 to 1988, I don't know, do the math. I was born in 1957. So the point, because I can't do the math, but the point is, so for a long time, I've been really okay with being alone and building that up. We increase that. And then I found, I realized more about myself, and I'm an introverted extrovert. So that accounts for why can I be here and talk and yada, yada, yada. And I can be really extroverted at times, but only for a certain period of time. And then I feel like my battery needs recharging. And so, but earlier, just to say now, and so what you can work toward, and why the pain and the anxiety, and or how scary it can be to start working at being alone, and in therapy, understanding the reasons, whether you have BP or codependency, why that's difficult or impossible for you. The reward of it is huge. So I sat here for an hour, like a little bit ago, in the dark, nothing on. Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing clothes. No sound, like no computer, no phone, no like podcast playing, no TV, nothing. And the people upstairs, actually, I don't know, they were sitting down or not home. And it was just blissful. And solitude is wonderful. And sometimes I thought about some things, I might have reflected about some things, and then at other times I really just get. I'm not a formal meditator, but I get into this place where I'm just really not thinking about much. I'm just being in the solitude. And I particularly love when that solitude involves just being enveloped and caressed by darkness in a room. It's such a comfortable, recharging place to be. So, and not everybody might want to do what I do with that. I have high functioning Asperger's. Probably like I like to go no stimulation for an hour. It's great. But the thing is, and the solitude. But people can go from being afraid of being alone and not understanding why to enjoying your own company and enjoying being alone. And that's why it's so important to take the journey. And it's not easy, but it's worth it. And it should have been us. It's a hard place to get, but there is a release and freedom from hurt. I appreciate your honesty. Well, yes, and I appreciate yours too, because none of these things, and people growing like yourself after what happened, with this person that had BPD in your life and how painful that would be. It's a testament to the, well, I can't say fact or reality, but people don't know sometimes until they're challenged with such adversity and pain that you are stronger than you could ever imagine. And of course, I would say that's the important part of whether you believe in God, whether you have a spiritual practice, a spirituality, to be in touch with that, because there's something out there for sure, whatever you conceive it to be. For me, I call that omnipotent, loving force God. But there's something out there that really is a part of us, at a soul level. So, and that's where I'll just add in here. I'm trying to stay off the topic, but psychiatry and all their mumbo jumbo nonsense, let me just put it that way, and what they're doing and why. What they keep forgetting is we aren't just this brain. We aren't just the mind. We aren't even just our emotions. We have souls. And each person's soul is something that psychiatry can't even fathom, it seems. And so sometimes we get wounded down to a soul level. And it's so important to have a spiritual practice, or faith-based practice, whichever works for you, or whichever you adopt in your own life, you choose, because we are more than everything that's attached so much to this world, right? And needing for connection, needing this, needing whatever we want from somebody, what we expect in a situation, relating to others. Well, okay, but what about that soul? What about that part of self inside that is, well, probably even aside from part of self, because it is the essence of something that I believe we're just, that our soul is old and wise and much more strong and much more powerful than we think, and linked to that higher omnipotent powerful force, or God, as I would say. And the soul has been other places, and the soul will be other places. And when we're in the physical body in this life, there's a sense that this is all there is to it, and it's so much more. And that's why I advocate for people in healing and recovery. The way I work with people, it's humanistic, it's human context based, it's based on each individual. It's not this pathology, that pathology, did. There's none of that matters when we look at the common cause of it all and the human suffering. So, VXN, AJ, I'm just a guy from a small town in Brazil, and I want to know that I want you to know that your words have resonated with me and helped me get through probably the lowest point in my life. Thank you for what you do. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so glad that I was able to be of help to you in that way, and that's very touching and inspirational. It's just humbling, and whenever I get feedback like that, thank you. It's very kind, and it inspires me even more, to just continue to do what I do the way that I do it, though not everybody resonates with me, and that's cool. If only the people that didn't resonate with me would understand they don't have to like push back and do crazy stuff about that. They could just go on and find somebody they do resonate with. Well, maybe some of those people don't resonate with anybody, and that would be a real challenge for anyone. But thank you so much, VXN. And then you said to should have been us. It'll get better. You're on the right track. Come back to AJ when you feel low. Start your learning more about these subjects like psychology or philosophy and loving yourself. Yeah, well, I think, people embracing common sense, among other things, and all those lovely words that's included in there. But you really have to have common sense with your emotional landscape as well. But it's really important to develop a personal philosophy, right? That includes your ethics, your morals, your values, defines you more to you. And many people need to do some redefining in that area as they continue or begin and or continue to heal and grow and change, or have come a long way in a healing process, or are over that person now with BPD, etc. And maybe also working through and or recovered from their codependency. Because another thing I like to say is, I don't believe that it's true that people, I mean, it's different for everybody, but people can, and nothing is 100% perfect, but people can recover from codependency. That's not always a state of having to do the 12 steps like every day of your life. Maybe in the beginning that's helpful, but that's not the only way to recovery from codependency either. It's a much deeper process than the 12 steps of CODA, though I'm not going to say if they help you, hey, that's cool too. But it's not that you have to be in this continual state of recovery after a relationship of any type with somebody with BPD or NPD. It's just not the case. People really grow, people really change. People who are reflective of an honest integrity about their own experience can really, like, I know for myself that these healing and recovery things that I've been through are not things that I have to manage anymore. I don't have to do this or that every day or else. No, not at all. And it should have been us said, if she were to reach out, I'm not a vindictive person. I know how hard BPD makes her life as she no longer treats, so she's not in treatment for it. If I don't want to put her in a place of further darkness, I wish her no hurt. Well, yes, but no contact would still be the thing to do, right? Because, you said you know how hard BPD makes her life. But remember, BPD isn't, so BPD is, badly defined. But the adverse experience of that and why she lost herself, etc. BPD is not like a third party in a relationship. BPD is not floating around. BPD is not this thing, right? It is the repetition compulsion expression of their adverse childhood experience. So just remember that in a larger context, because that experience that she had is going to be repeated, played out until unless she goes to get therapy. So you won't be, if you stay no contact, you won't be putting her in any place of more darkness or more hurt. She has to take responsibility now. It's not fair because people don't ask to get, quote, BPD, right? They don't ask for what happens to them in their childhood. But you can't help her. And so just no contact. There's nothing you could say that would help her at all. And you need to just take care of yourself. And that might sound callous or cold, but it's not. It's just you let her go, she's gone, right? And so having compassion is fine. If one is inclined to pray, you can pray for a person or whatever you might do spiritually. But just, and again, you might not be saying this, I understand, in a way that you mean that you would say anything to her. But because you're not a vindictive person, hopefully what you mean is, you still care or you have compassion, okay, but don't act on that is what I'm saying, right? It's great to have it, but it's not healthy to act on it. Out to sea. I just told my best friend about this stream. Now she wants to come here and she'll stop being my friend because you can't be friends with someone with BPD. I was stupid to tell her. Well, I would say if your friend does come to a live stream of mine, that every person with BPD is an individual. And so your friend who knows you shouldn't change their opinion of you or your friendship based on anything I say in a general way. Okay? So just know that. I'm not, have to say a lot of general things, right? Because I don't know, especially in videos, and even here, I don't know who's listening or watching. But the thing is, I would say to you out to see that if you have a friendship with that person, and I'm putting it on the record here, I'm saying, for people with BPD, each one of them individual and not all the same, etc. If you have a friendship with somebody with BPD and it's working and it's not hurting you and you care about that person, then my general broad stroke statements aren't meaning that you need to not be friends with that person anymore. Because not all friendships with people with BPD are in any way, hurting somebody else, or, some people with BPD are capable of friendship. And it takes a little more therapy to be capable of more in a significant other relationship, but many people with BPD are getting there too. So many aren't, but many are. So that's what I would say. It's really important to remember that BPD people with this adverse response, known as BPD, are not a monolithic group. They're not all the same. So you have to continue to know who it is that you know and how that is for you in your life. So that's what I would say out to sea. And I would hope that tell your friend I said that in case they come to a live stream. Because I really mean that, by the way. Wheels. Honestly, it does. I thought I was being a psycho in my own way. No, no, no. That's just your, used to internalizing in a rather automatic way what the psycho actually does, which happens to everybody, gets interjected, right? And you said that you hate this woman so much. I don't blame you. That's very healthy. And the little stunt also brought back a lot for me. I'm afraid I'm at a level of anger that I probably can't put into words. Well, and that's understandable too, Wheels. And so what's important about that is anger is healthy, and then you need to make sure you channel it in a healthy direction, right? Because who among us wouldn't have wanted to take a narcissistic mother and, just fill in the blank there, to the head, to the neck, to the body, to it. I mean, I had my fantasies growing up, and probably until I think sometimes I'm working with clients and they say things and they think it's so horrible, I will share. So it's been brought back to my mind, but I always had some active fantasies about what I wanted to do to each of my parents, but never did do. But that kind of fantasy, that anger, that as long as you don't act on it, it's quite fine to allow that to be something that you are visualizing, if you know what I'm saying. And should have been us to BXN. Absolutely. I've listened to so many of AJ's videos. Like you, I very much benefit from her insights, much needed in such a difficult time in my life. Well, thank you. I was just reading one person's comment to another. I didn't know what it was going to say. But hey there, Karen. How are you doing today? Tonight, or whatever time it is, wherever you are. You said, AJ, could you explain the dynamic in a lesbian BPD codependent relationship? And does this relationship to their mothers have anything to do with it? Wow, I don't think I can get into all that right now, but I am going to take a screenshot because I am intending to do some videos on that for sure. So I will do one just answering your question right there because that's a good 20 minutes if I can put it into 20 minutes right there. But I will say right now that the dynamic in a lesbian BPD codependent relationship, while there are some differences, which I will get into in that video that I will do soon, um, there's a lot of similarities to heterosexual relationships. So there's a lot that's very similar in the relationships that it holds true regardless of, same sex or heterosexual relationships. But yes, I want to speak to some of the things that are a little bit different for people in lesbian relationships, as you mentioned. And then it would be a little bit different also for gay men. And of course, it's not the same for every single lesbian with somebody with BPD or a gay man with somebody with BPD or NPD. But of course, you would know, Karen, as I know, as a lesbian, that there are so many lesbians out there that it's like in the for lack of a better way to put it, the population base of other lesbian women in that demographic. I don't mean to make it sound so cold, um, high percentage. So that's the other thing. That's one thing I would say is a stark difference. So for heterosexual men, we're going to end up with a BPD woman. Okay, so there's percentages rising of chances, and if they have codependency, etc., which is the same for lesbians if you have codependency, etc., something from childhood. But the thing is, and I can't quantify it, but I know it's true. There's exponentially a higher percent of lesbian women, probably because it's still a little bit higher percent of women, but I don't think it has anything to do with them being lesbian, but just that they're women that have BPD. So it makes it much harder in a community, in the LGBT community, to not, continually run into cluster B women. So that's one thing that is a stark difference, I would say, in percentages, but like can't quantify those percentages. And then you also said, does the relationship to their mothers have anything to do with it? Well, you know what? Whether one is a lesbian or gay man or a heterosexual woman or transgender or somewhere fluidly in the middle, it always goes back in one way or another to mother, even in a perception based of 25% with BPD. So can be about dad too, but it always goes back to mother. And when the mother, that is the first object, that is, quote, in a Freudian sense, the first love of each infant's life, now we're not, putting anything else on that, right? When that doesn't go well, it always goes back to mother. It's the deepest part of any woundedness in infancy and early childhood, or even later in childhood for people that have codependency and not BPD. And so mothers have all to do with it, except in the 25%, but then they're perceived to have all to do with it. And this is true whether somebody is male or female. It speaks to, or straight or gay or whatever, because it speaks to the reality. So, sometimes a woman could say to a male partner, you're just like my mother. And they're going to re-experience mother through that object other because of where they're getting triggered. So it always goes back to mother, and not to vilify mothers, and especially not in the 25%. But and in my healing and recovery journey, what I found out and what I know also, in helping others for 30 years, when people have any woundedness from both parents, um, fathers are important, okay? Or lesbian women often try to find, and especially if they have a boy or a girl, they try to find a male, a balance of, role models and etc. in people's lives. But the thing is that it's so it doesn't even matter the gender of the person that is with the person with BPD, because the issues of object other parent representation that you're going to become going to happen regardless of gender, regardless of same sex or heterosexual, regardless of all of that. And if one is wounded by one's father also, and lots of people are wounded by both parents, I was, then what's going to happen is, what I learned was, just I'll give my example. So when I was doing the healing recovery work from all that happened with my father and what he did, that was really, really super painful, really difficult, without a doubt. But then when I got to the mother stuff, it's deeper because, it goes back to that first relationship
that we are hoping to have, but some of us never get, with mother, who is the first love, as Freud would say, I believe. As Bradshaw says, is that her face is the world to us. And as object relations theory would say, is the first object. So when people with BPD get the arrested emotional development by the age of 2, and they haven't gone on to develop emotionally through the other stages of early childhood development to be able to be an adult emotionally, then everything is going to be about mother. It's so primal, and that's why. So, and I will do a video more specifically on the other question you asked, because it would take a good 20 minutes or more, and I would also like to think about it so that I won't miss some really important things. BXN to should have been us. She is so tuned in and precise with her knowledge. Always, oh, I'm sorry, I should be reading. On point, and she explains it in such a simple way, which is the mark of a great teacher and student. Very sensible as well. Okay, I'm reading what you're saying to someone else again, and I'm just okay. So I'm humbled and but maybe I shouldn't read what you're saying to someone else, because if it's about me, so BXN, letting go doesn't mean you wish them harm. That's very true. And some people have to go through a stage of anger and etc. And some people may not resolve that. But it's very true that letting go doesn't mean you wish them any harm in more cases than not. But it also doesn't mean you let them in. Very well said. Very wise. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And out to sea. Oh, you're very welcome. And I really mean that, because if you have a friendship or you have friendships with people, that's you're you. I mean, you might not know entirely who you are, but as a person with BPD doesn't mean you're like everybody else. So you got to remember that what's happening in your life. I don't. So when I make general statements, please don't take them in, don't internalize them as true about you when they don't fit. Like if you're able to have a friend or friendships, that's great, and know that your friends, that's working for you then. And so I would not want to ever tell somebody in that situation. I don't want to tell anybody what to do anyways, but yes, my general statements don't apply to all situations. In relationships more often than not, but in friendships it can be quite different. It should have been us, to VXN. Oh, you said, yes, I meant that I'm not in a place of, quote, getting the last word, unquote, or seeking, quote, explanation, unquote. I know letting her go is the best outcome for both of us. It will be a cycle that doesn't end. Well, yes, as you said, I often say. It's very true. Because unless until they go to therapy for years and years of work, right, and really do that work, then they're not going to heal. If they don't heal what has been, I don't like the word broken, but, because that arrested emotional development for people with BPD, it means that the child's state of ego is fragmented off from, and that allows the full self to rise up and a whole lot of things to happen the way they do. And then people with BPD are burdened with having to take responsibility for all this in adulthood to heal it. But it can be healed, and when it is healed, unlike what other YouTubers are saying out there, it can be healed and it sticks. And you don't ever go back to ways that you acted, ways that you behaved, ways that you felt. Not at all. Because neuroplasticity is real. And from a brain level on out to our emotional landscape, to developing emotional intelligence. People and I'm not just saying this about myself because, like, I got to be humble. I want to be humble. I don't want to sound arrogant here. But when people go through this journey and recover from BPD, and when people have an honest, integrity about any recovery journey and or healing from codependency, then you need to know that by the time you get there, you have more emotional intelligence than most of the world, so to speak, because you might have come from this place that was really harder to come from. Some healthy people out there, averagely mentally healthy, that never went through all this, they have great emotional intelligence too. But when we build ourselves back and we find ourselves and we heal and recover, unlike what other YouTubers are saying out there, people with BPD are not always going to have BPD. That's a choice. If you make a choice to heal and recover, you will be healed and you will recover. And it might take years, and it took me years, but I'm not like that anymore. It does not apply to me. So, it's really important to say that and codependency are not lifelong managing things. Like, if people really do the work to heal. and out to sea. I'll tell my friend what you said in case she listens to some of your streams. Well, definitely do, and maybe that's something I could do a video on as well, that like a lot of people won't watch, but that's okay. I need to upset it more than in one place, right? It should have been us. AJ, lesbian relationship is what we had as well. Looking forward to your future video in response to Karen. Okay, cool. Yeah, because there's obviously we all know what the stark differences are between same-sex relationships and heterosexual relationships. But other than that stark difference, yes, in the dynamics there can be some differences, but again, on the whole, so not entirely, things are relatively dynamics created are in many ways the same between lesbian, in relationships, or gay men with a gay man, or heterosexual men and women. So, but yes, but there are things that are somewhat different. And Wheels, I was never allowed to feel anything. It was always a me problem in the eyes of both parents. It never matters why I feel that way. It's always, yeah, my fault. Of course, it isn't, but that's what they've taught you. Yes, that's what they've put upon you. And Psycho has always lived something worse. Mm. And then you said having someone tell me my feelings are normal and okay is a wild experience. I almost don't know how to deal with that. I don't even know what to say. Well, Wheels, I'll just say this much, right? What I'm telling you is true. Your feelings are normal for the situation. You are understanding things correctly. It is not your fault. And I want to validate that for you. And I'm again so sorry for what you are going through. I think you're going through it in the strongest way that you can. And if you don't know how to deal with it yet, it's probably because sadly you've had so little of that in your life. So I want to just reiterate for you again that I validate your experience and that and I don't want to reference myself too much, but that I've been through it and I've talked about it and I've shared that I've felt a lot of the ways that you feel, and many, many other people have too. Hey there, roller girl, how you doing? Um, Edith, hey there. Broken is the right word. That is the feeling. I like the not going back part. Well, it's really important because there's YouTubers out there like, they're borderline. They're always going to be borderline. Even if they get into treatment, they're always going to do this. And no, they're not. Many might not get to a point where, but then they can still change a lot, right? And maybe they take a certain portion of relational difficulty off the table and don't ever have to go back. And so, and broken is, yes, I understand the importance of broken, but I hesitate to use it because it's overused and misused by so many others on YouTube that I just didn't want to be part of sounding like I was in a narrative of anybody else. And so, but I hear you. That's why I chose a different word. Wheels. Now that I think about it, I can't really remember ever getting validation from anyone, and my disability adds a whole other layer. Yes, I'm sure it would. And that's something that I wouldn't know, like not physically about a disability. And I don't believe Asperger's is a disability. I think it's a different ability. But I hear you, Wheels. And of course, it's contributed largely to what's kept you, there as long and making it harder to get out of there for sure. There are a lot of things that disabled people aren't allowed to do. I know. And one of them can't be that you're not allowed to get away from this person and this family of origin. And one of them can't be that you're not allowed to find a place to be safe and, be able to heal more and then be able to experience life differently because you so deserve that. Edith, thanks for the hope. I hate the idea that I'd be stuck unknitting this sticky spider web the rest of my life. No, really, when people really do their work, there's no need for that. Like, some people might only go so far, and they might still have some of that to do. Some people really don't take the journey beyond DBT skills, and so they're really great at managing symptoms, but then that's like whack-a-mole. So, but you can really get beyond all of that. And too many people out there are saying stuff like, it's not possible. Psychiatry says it for crying out loud, but like, remember, I don't say I know more than them. I just question that they don't know a whole lot like they pretend to know. So, and I think I've spoken to that a lot, so I won't say any more tonight. Um, yeah, and you weren't allowed to feel either, Wheels. Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry for everything that you've been through and are going through still. And just know that what you're feeling is absolutely healthy to be feeling. Should have been us. AJ, thank you so much for your time and professional insights in driving effective conversation. Very much looking forward to your next live stream. Thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you again. Edith to Wheels. Run from, quote, normal, unquote, people who pretend to understand you and presume that they can tell you the right way to proceed in your journey. Well, Wheels is in a different kind of a situation, and it's complicated, but Wheels is working hard, and you know, Wheels does, as you just said, has a physical disability, and things are complicated, and it's really hard. Not everybody has the freedom to just get up and go, and um, and Wheels isn't dealing with any, quote, normal people, unquote. He's dealing with narcissists. So just to add that in there. But I know you mean well, Edith, and you're just trying to support Wheels, and that's fantastic. Because Wheels needs a lot of support right now, as do lots of people. So anyway, I hope that what I said in the beginning will be helpful for people to think about. Maybe adopt one of those things if it resonates with you. And I think too that common sense. I put that in this what do you call it, thumbnail. Put that like that for a reason, because common sense is a bigger part of healing and understanding and coming to know self than people realize. And I would also say the common sense, like civility and other things in our world, in a lot of people's experience, is kind of sliding away. It's kind of getting lost, and people need to bring back, you know, this idea of creating your own personal philosophy and re-identifying or identifying and knowing what are your ethics, your values, your morals, what do you like, what don't you like, and what is common sense. Because common sense would tell us, and there's reasons why people can't just go, oh yeah, of course, and then end these relationships or get into treatment for BPD, for example, too. But common sense tells us, like, that gut intuition is very much about common sense, and it tells us when something is really not okay. And then there's reasons why, of course, people go beyond the not okay. But I think people need to remember some common sense. And remember, too, that gut instinct is not just a woo woo feeling. Sometimes our emotions can cloud what the gut instinct is trying to tell us. But that gut instinct is the gut brain. There are more neurons, thousands or millions more neurons in the gut brain than the brain in our heads. And the gut brain communicates more from the gut up to the brain in our heads and vice versa. And it does so by the polyvagal nerve. And it's so incredibly important as there's a pioneering and created understanding. So there's such a thing known as polyvagal therapy. So the gut intuition instinct is gut brain. It is not just some crazy feeling but then we have to be careful about how our emotions can cloud the wisdom of what the gut brain is trying to tell us. My gut literally tells me by giving me digestive upset if something is really stressful. Always has, doesn't happen as much now. But if I don't pay attention to something, then if I'm stressed by something or whatever the case, or I just haven't, taken enough time for myself or whatever it might be, or gotten enough sleep, those kinds of things, then my gut brain and the IBS beside it, off it goes. But the thing is, so our gut brain, lots of neurons in there, and it's not just an instinct. And then the messages are sent up the polyvagal nerve into our brain, in our heads. So think about your instincts. Start thinking about what is common sense. What does that mean? Are you living your life, among all other things, with more common sense? Because a lot of people kind of like lost that. And so it's practical often, like these words, it's logical. It's about solving. It's about getting clarity. It's about knowing your emotional landscape, right? It's common sense, all this. Invoking and building wise strategy. Learning how to make better decisions, which is all about knowing yourself better. All this word cloud around common sense. But it's really important for people to think about, too. And Edith said, awesome. I love the whack-a-mole reference. Additionally, it's not that they know more. Um, they feel overwhelmed, don't want to be bothered. You'll get through it, Wheels. People adapt and grow. Yeah, well, the thing about Wheels, for Wheels, it's like Wheels is adapting and growing, but nobody in Wheels' family of origin is adapting or growing. So Wheels has to get out, and that's been a challenge because Wheels wants to get out. And yeah, so people with BPD are always playing whack-a-mole with the emotions until they go through enough healing to be able to, because we can, people with BPD can really heal those emotions and where they come from, and heal that down deep, finding self, knowing self, and reparenting self. And that usually has to happen in therapy. I work with a lot of clients. That's how it happened for me, was the therapists that were skilled enough and helped me with all of that. I couldn't do it by myself. And otherwise it is whack-a-mole for people with BPD. And Wills, thanks so much for that, AJ. You're so welcome. I feel like I'm losing my mind, but you're not. Okay, but I understand what you're saying. It's like waking up in a twilight zone every morning. Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry to hear that. But just keep reminding yourself, I know what I know. I have this right. She's crazy. They're crazy. I know what I know. Or words to that effect, whatever would work for you. And eat it to Wheels. It's not the Twilight Zone. It's the wacky Demento Zone that sucks us all in. I'd give anything for it to be the Twilight Zone. Well, you know, fair enough, but I think when Wheels expresses that it feels like the Twilight Zone to him, that's his reference, right? Everybody has their own way of referencing what it is for them, just like you just did, Edith. I think people have to just know that everybody's going to express that a different way, and maybe people are largely referring to very similar experiences, and maybe similar experiences in different ways. But because I would say, like in my family of origin, when I was a kid growing up, I don't know what reference I would have used. I mean, the Twilight Zone was like on TV then. Might preceded me a bit, but I didn't. I watched some of it, but not a lot. Probably because I was living that experience. Being so gaslit, not knowing what was going on. I mean, I knew who I was, and well, I didn't know who I was, but I mean, I knew everything about objective reality. Otherwise, but I had no idea why I felt what I felt, what the parents were up to, etc. And so that's probably why I didn't watch much of the Twilight Zone, because it was like, I think I know this, like woo woo, like confusion and what's going on here in my life. So I didn't know that at the time, though. Wheels to eat it. Yes. The last thing you said is true. A lot of for a lot of able-bodied people, it's much easier for them to judge and dehumanize me because I make them uncomfortable instead of seeing me as a person too, with my own goals and dreams and problems, etc. Well, I'm not sure there, Wheels, if you're referring to other people as well or like your family of origin, but yeah, I mean, what's a narcissist going to feel when a child has any disability or handicap of any sort, but that somehow they're going to take that personally? They're going to make that all about themselves. They don't love their kids anyways, but they're going to make it worse on the child that they feel in what's the word, infringes upon their idea of their own quote perfect unquote narcissistic image, which is nonsense, right? But this is where these people live, in this zone of cuckoo, or just a lack of a better way to put it. And so then, of course, by the very nature of the situation Wheels is in, and having a disability, then he's going to be ripe for supply, unfortunately, to the narcissist. And he's not going to be able to do what other people could do to protect themselves as well. And so, so the fact that somebody has a disability of any type to a narcissist, for them equals that people will think they failed somehow, because they make it all about themselves. And so, like, I'm not saying, like, I was the child, I'm the adult. Well, I'm not in contact. Who cares? My mother's still. I don't care. My father's been dead since 1997. And I mean, I've forgiven them anyway. But the point is that they do not love us. And when we're children, they do not love us. And they give us everything but love. And that's what Wheels is going through. And they do it because it serves them. It's sadistic and they get supply. And so if anyone has a narcissistic parent of any age and you're wondering right now if they love you or not, sorry, they don't, because they can't. And then that becomes a journey unto itself for people, because I've taken that journey a long time ago, but it's very, very painful. And it's very important to take that grief journey and to separate from. And Wheels wants to. And Wheels would have been out of there probably years ago if if it weren't for what is holding Wheels there, which is not being just, quote, how'd you put it, Wheels? Um, an able-bodied person. Yes, because I want to be careful how I describe that. And I know you're not so careful about it, but I want to be. At times you're not, which is your prerogative. And yeah, so, in that way, Wheels, too, you represent, quote, now don't hear this wrong, because you are an amazing person and you deserve to be seen for who you are, which she can't do. But the thing is, you're seen as diminishing her somehow in her narcissistic grandiosity of like ridiculous, uber like ridiculousness, which is horribly painful. And then, you can't just get up and leave and get out of the situation, or you would have done that years ago. So I deal with this outside of the narcs a lot too. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, yes, because there's a lot to deal with in general in the world with. You said it's not all able-bodied people by any stretch, but it's more common than people realize. Yes, definitely. It's like any difference out there, and I don't mean to minimize your experience at all, Wheels. It can be really horrific for people with who aren't able-bodied, or, and I don't mean to minimize the difference there, Wheels. Any difference, people can get extremely treated and incredibly awfully by people, even people that can't claim to be BPD or NPD. Because there's a lot of people out there that are just straight up not healthy, and who knows if they fit a label or not. And labels, of course, fitting a label is not so important as knowing what that means and going and seeking treatment. Edith, my persecutors were like loan sharks and leg breaking gangsters. Oh, wow. These blender brains, I love the way you put things, can't be happy in any situation. I've seen my narc have brief victories, gloat, and snap after the moment's passed. Yes, because they're absolute empty shells, and they can never get enough supply, and there is nobody home in there. It's just a false self iteration of a mix of, the everything narcissistic and grandiose, etc., in their delusional, you know, delusions of grandeur. Yes, they are delusions of grandeur. Grandeur. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, but it never lasts long for them, because everything for them is fleeting. Because there's nobody home there really. There's no known self. There's no person. There's no real self. It's all false self, and it's all heavily protected self. And of course, they don't see any difference between their, quote, self, unquote, narcissist and others, because they just believe others are the objects from which they can extract the supply they need. Everything is a transaction with a narcissist, and nobody benefits. It just, no. So, anyway, I'm just aware of the time, and I probably should get going. So, I hope people will think about, if something was helpful on the stream that somebody else said. I really appreciate people who come and share your wisdom and your experience and your understanding, and or people that are seeking, like help, or like Wheels needed some validation, or people that ask questions, and other people that share with each other. That's all wonderful, and I think it all helps to educate people when they listen or watch. Well, if I'm ever on camera, watch back or listen, whatever, to the streams. And Wheels said, "I understand what you mean. I'm a stain on her otherwise perfect image in her mind. Well, in her mind, yes, only." I've always been aware of that to one degree or another. And by the way, we all, when we are the adult child and an adult child of a narcissist, we are all that for one reason or another. So please know that
yes, you're not being able-bodied is a big reason, but it's probably not the only. And if you were able-bodied, as I can attest and many people can attest to, they'll find another reason. So there's always reasons. So don't let what they target the most, diminish anything about who you are, because it's what they target the most that's the easiest for them to target, because they're also very lazy. Edith, you're right, AJ. I went into the hospital, had gallbladder surgery, and my narc freaked out on me after she drove me home and saw that my sister hadn't cleaned the house. Well, wow, it's you're lucky they even picked you up, because a lot of times they're just nowhere to be found when you need anything, right? But and then freaking out on you after she drove you home, yeah, because it's something that your sister didn't do. I know that one really well too. I'll just give one example. I was in grade 12. I was up in my room doing my homework, minding my own business, trying hard to stay separate from that family of origin. The golden child was in the kitchen and broke a glass. And the parents were outside with company, like, like making a lot. It was hard for me to do my homework because my bedroom faced the back where they were making all this racket and getting all drunk and stuff. And so when the golden child broke the glass, I made the mistake of laughing. Like, could this like special idiot dude actually get in trouble for something? And so I guess when I laughed, I didn't laugh that loud, but it went out the window. And he came flying up, and it was 3 flights of stairs in that case, in that house. Came flying up 3 flights of stairs, burst into my room, was pretty physical about it, and screaming at me that, I don't want you laughing at because, and it was my fault, don't you know, that the golden child broke the glass. Which, like, I was what? I think 16 in grade 12. And that's crazy making stuff because you're like, what? And you know that you didn't do that. No, it just sets up that whole thing. But that's a rather innocuous example, but still, it is crazy making. It was at the time. Wheels, yeah, I think I know what a lot of other reasons are. Yes, and even when you identify reasons, Wheels, they would make up a reason if there wasn't a reason. If you know what I mean? So don't let any of those reasons affect you for who you really are. Because if there wasn't this or that, or like that you're not able bodied or something like that to be the reason that gets focused on, they'd make one up. And Wheels, it's likely that it's the biggest reason. Oh, it's likely the biggest reason isn't even that, right? Well, the biggest reason goes back to the fact that she's a narcissist and what all that really means and why she's a narcissist and how unchanging that is and what they do to people. So it all goes back to them. It's all on them. So that's what's really important, to separate yourself from that. And easier said than done, but really important. Because like with narcissists, just like somebody with BPD who might be acting out or having difficulty, well, it's what's happening for them, and other people need to detach from that, get into neutrality with that. And of course, if you know are away from, well, in your case, Wills, you have to work on the neutrality of detachment, but it's hard to do that when what you've just been through. And also, um yeah, I mean, because it can often be not only that there's no emotional safety, but physical safety comes into question too. And Edith said to Wheels, picture yourself as either MacGyver or Mad Max. I didn't like either of those shows, but anyway. Yeah, they got out of everything, didn't they? Reimagining yourself helps. Yeah, that could be helpful. I've done it loads of times. I wish my narc had been unavailable. Your inner X-Man is on its way. Oh, Wheels already knows his inner X-Man. I think. Wheels, she's just freaking nuts no matter what way you slice it. That's true. It's absolutely true. And so I hope, that you're going to be able to, finally find that escape route that you've been looking so hard for, that will provide you some safety and help you to move forward. And because that would be, That's something, I've been praying for you, Wheels, and that's the thing I pray for the most, because you're strong and you're so intelligent and you're so deserving and you're a wonderful person. And if you could just get that break of being able to get away from them, yes, there's more work to do, but wow, you so deserve that. So, yeah, with that though, I'm going to get going, and I want everybody to take the best care of themselves that they can. And keep remembering whatever the challenges that you are facing, whether you have BPD, whether you have codependency, whether you're still, even when you've healed from a relationship with a person with BPD or NPD or whatever, or if that person with BPD, NPD comorbid or BPD or NPD is a parent, people have a lot of things, and especially like Wheels is in a situation I'm sure he's not alone in, and other people are in as well, which is horrific. But even after you get away from them, there's a lot of healing and recovery work to do. And I'm just going to keep it real here by saying, especially narcissists, as a parent, there's no love there. And with BPD, it can be very, not everybody with BPD is the same, but it can be very wounding to children as well to have a parent with BPD. And Will said good night and thank you so much. You're very welcome. And Edith said to Wheels, you're right. How are you at chemistry? We should all team up and perhaps develop a black flag spray. Yeah, wouldn't that be something, eh? But so the best thing that we know now is that we have to detach. If you're with around someone like this, you have to detach, find neutrality when you can, get away from them when you can, and stay in the healing and recovery journey, which takes people various amounts of time. But you gotta learn, if you haven't already, to radically accept what is, embrace the pain. It's difficult. Make sure that you learn how to strategize around coping with that, so anybody doesn't end up playing whack-a-mole with their pain. Because the more we resist something, the more it will persist, even when one has gotten away from the narcissist or the person with BPD in any relationship type or not. People need their own healing recovery journeys to really let it go. And that does involve pain, it does involve grief, and it is a process. But people with BP can heal and recover, and they don't continue to have to work on it. And same with people with codependency. And I want to just strongly make those statements because that's what I know, not only in my own life, but working with clients over the last 30 years. People do create and make change and go forward and find themselves more. They heal, they recover, and they create new lives for themselves. And it all starts with finding self in the case of BPD, knowing self more in the case of codependency, and really healing that woundedness from childhood, which is not the same in BPD and codependency. And some overlap, but not the same. And Wheels, I have some knowledge. I'd patent that. Yes. And he just said it's sad that these narc parents are such pod people. Um, yes. Start a GoFundMe for that, right? Yes. Well, and unfortunately, right now with the state of the world, I'll just make this a summary statement, but people are going through what they're going through, which is so important, and people need to really work hard to get away from these people in your life, in any relationship type, be it a person with BPD or a narcissist or comorbidity both. But we're all dealing with narcopathic gaslighting on a mass scale around the world. So if people out there who have codependency and wonder what it's like, or you didn't have a parent and you wonder what it's like to be gaslit, just look at the joke that is the corporatocracy of mainstream media and the technocrats and what's being forwarded in our world today. And when I say joke, it's not funny, is it? But it's massive gaslighting. And so we're all in this response, and I would say a lot of people are having, and myself included at times, a rather fawning, codependent response to the gaslighting of the narcopathic reality of what they're doing to our world, to each of us in whatever, we all have to take care of ourselves in the macrocosm of it all, let alone people are going through this in the microcosm of their individual personal experiences. So anyway, with that said, I hope something about this live stream was helpful for those here. Lovely interacting with you. I thank people for all their kind words, and and everything you shared and shared with each other. And look forward to the next live stream. And hope this helps people who might watch it back or parts of it back. So everybody take care and look forward to next time, where I'll make sure when I have a video to play it actually works. Haha. There you go. You never know.